realtor's house. And I thought he said it was soundproof, and it wasn't. And I went in there and played drums all night and locked the door behind me. And no one, I couldn't hear anyone banging on the walls or anything like that. I kept him and his family up all night long. I felt so bad. They were so pissed. And they were they're so mad. Of course, I ended up, leaving the band and going on tour, But that kind of just got me down the road. And then, you meet people and drummers get passed around. But more to what you were saying, it's like I'm going through. That happened. I was like 22, 23, and I'm just like hitting the road. And I kept doing jobs. I remember getting laid off from PricewaterhouseCoopers like 2 days before I was going to have to quit because I was going on tour, and I was like trying to hold out as long as I could. And I'm like, oh, this is going to look terrible. I'm quitting my first job out of college, And then they bring me in. They're like, sorry, man, we're laying off everyone from your hiring class because of the .com bubble. And I was like, oh, man, you saved my life. I was going to quit in 2 days. And I told them everything I'm doing. They're like, you're going on tour? I'm like, yeah. And you're giving me severance and I can get unemployment. You're giving me nice recommendations. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, this is perfect. They're like, have a great time. Yeah. But, I was on the road and I just thought, I saw acupuncturists along the way. And they're all like, oh, you should be a doctor. You'll be great. You'll be great. And I'm like, nah, I'm going to be a rock star. Get lost,
Yeah.
And, but then I always had it in the back of my mind, if I hit my 30s and I'm still struggling, like there's no momentum.
Yeah.
Then I'll look at something else. And just at that time, I happened to be seeing this acupuncturist and, Dr. Jung. I can't even remember her first name, but she lives in San Jose now.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And she was saying you should do this, and it just hit me right at that right point, and I was just like, all right, I'll go check it out, And I was down the rabbit's hole, and then like halfway through medical school, I come home one night and Zena's sitting on the couch drinking wine and reading through one of my textbooks. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, what?
This is really interesting. Yeah, that's really cool.
And I'm like, all right, well, you should do this. And we both grew up in family businesses.
Yeah,
we're both not really made to work for the man.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, we could do it, it's fine. But I think we're both best like hoeing our own road,
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's come across great. And that was
That's
doing
amazing.
great up until all this crap. And then, our clinic, we're sitting in one of the
rooms, you were saying, and then
I
think a lot of people got, any kind of treatment, if you will, whether it was medical, dental, they just got to the point where, social distancing, we don't know enough about the virus. They got scared. You wouldn't go in that environment. I mean, we finally, I think I might have skipped one cycle with Amelia and I with the kids at the dentist. We're like, we'll let it go. Then it's coming up on a year. Right now it's not 6 months. Like, okay, no, we got to get him in there.
Right.
And even the kids taking him, the great dentist that we take him to said, well, you know what? Things have been slow. We open back up, but some people are still afraid. They're afraid of, health risks. And I said, well, not taking kids to the dentist for a couple of years is a pretty big health risk in itself. What everything's about balance. What do you do?
Yeah. I've had some people call up and be actually kind of like mad at us because we're not open.
Yeah.
And I know if we're considered an essential business, we could open, but like people don't realize, they're like, hey, there's a lot more than just opening the doors. Like, what are we going to do with our kids? Like how do like our babysitter takes public transportation to get here. How are we gonna?
Yeah.
I don't want someone sitting on the bus and then coming in our home.
Right.
Don't know who they're around and what's going on.
Right.
Like I could check temperatures. She's even willing to bring her change of clothes and get changed and stuff like that. But you just don't know.
Yeah. And as you're saying, you could be exposed on that bus on the way over.
Absolutely.
You don't know. The whole thing is just, I'm really looking forward to the day when we have this behind us somehow.
I know.
I think all of us are, obviously. And
yeah. Nobody wants us around. The one thing I tell, like people who give me grief about it, I said, the only thing I can trust right now is that the information we have changes weekly,
Yeah.
And until that volatility of information and plan and all of that calms down, I'm fortunate that I was able to kind of reach out and find some side consulting work and stuff to keep the lights on and stuff like that. But it's not. I don't know how long it'll last. If that goes away, then we may just be forced to reopen. I don't know. it's definitely not a confidence-inducing position to be in, is it?
No, it's so crazy. Yeah, but like I say, I think I think we're getting a little more information, as you know, right? Like you were saying, what was it today? CDC's finally saying that maybe airborne particles indoor at more than 6 feet, right? So
I know.
So what do? I think let's be a little further than 6 feet apart, right? Or whatever, or just limit how much indoor. I think that's I love the way you put it in some of your posts or even at the Jam Live was let's just apply the lowest common denominator. If we know this is what keeps you safe or keeps others comfortable, do that. And if you're not comfortable, going out and as you said, not comfortable sitting in a lawn chair on the street, then go to Facebook Live
that's why I put it on live. Yeah.
Or start cooking at home if you don't want to go out to dinner, and that's what's funny. I'm not to be political because I'm not. I don't like that, and I think I hardly have time for politics in political discussions, let alone in just everyday life. But you will see people who, for some reason, this whole mask and social distancing, it becomes. I don't even want to say it's a political thing or a power struggle, whatever it is. But I remember I was able to get out on the road and see a customer, and we're eating at an all outdoor restaurant, plenty of distance, in Newport Beach. Mm-hmm. And the only thing we had to do was if you walk and you sit, and then you can take your mask off once you're sitting and you're consuming. And if you got to use the restroom, even though there's an outdoor path to it, you had to put your mask on and walk back to the restroom. And I had people, this is bullshit, I'm not doing it, or whatever they were complaining. I thought, it's not a big deal. You're actually out at dinner. This restaurant's open. These people are working. Right. We get the privilege of being served wine and food, and it's not that big a deal, and it's temporary. So to really stomp your feet, like I was saying, maybe this person should just eat their dinner at home. Right. I just don't understand why people are fighting. Yeah, I don't like it either. I think it sucks. I think then I stand up after a couple of beers and forget to put the mask on, but I just go in my pocket and put it on and play by that rule. But I'm really grateful that is, some of these restaurants are opened. Even though it's a little weird, like Mastro's here in Thousand Oaks, you're eating in a damn parking lot, right under a tent.
That's crazy,
right? It's weird.
I'm thinking, Mastro,
it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird to do a $300 or $400 dinner and you're out in a parking lot, sitting between painted white stripes or whatever. But at least it's there. I love the workaround. That's what I kind of dig. Yeah. I do like seeing how everybody's been able to pivot and work around these things.
What are some favorite places that you and your wife have found since you moved here that you miss going to?
Gosh, that's one of them. Obviously, we always liked Paul Martin's as a restaurant to go to. Yeah. Any dining out, that's always a great thing for us. Whether it's like would call it date night, right? If the kids are not with you, and when the kids are with us, there's places that we like taking them that they can eat too. So as things get a little colder, maybe I'm going to start missing the indoor dining experience because right now. It hasn't been a huge adjustment. I feel really fortunate. Like
buy stock in whatever companies make those outdoor heaters.
No kidding, huh? Yeah, or the propane guy that has to come and refill those tanks, right?
Yeah, natural gas stock.
That's really fun. That was another business when I was trying to think of. I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial spirit too, and that's where I'm finally in the best role of being a guy that works out of home for a major company and travels and manages my own part of that business, right? Mm-hmm. But I had a few companies I'd started and or rep agencies or import business, I guess trading company we'll call it. But that was one idea I had as a fairly young person, and I'm sure they do it now. But I kept thinking about the propane exchange where people put the propane bottle. You go to the 7-Eleven now, you don't have to refill a propane tank. You just drop an empty one off, pick one. Right. I kept thinking, man, be a guy with a truck full of propane bottles and go to those restaurants and just change those gas bottles out and all those. And then I really looked into it, right? And to me, it was kind of like a landscaper guy just has to buy a lawnmower and some equipment in a truck. Right. It sounds easy, and you find out it's not that easy, right? It's always something. And for me, it was all about transporting flammable gas. You can't just be a business. Right? Any teenage dude could drive a truck full of propane but to actually run a business and fill an 8-foot truck bed full of, what I was like, it's going to get complicated. Maybe this is, and luckily at that point, somebody had offered a pretty decent job, and I just said, well, that's pretty good, and I'll move on. But I still think about it now, right? Now I think about all those propane heaters that are going to be outside. Like you just said, I'm sure, because everybody's moved their damn dining room to the parking lot, which is comical in a way. But I'm glad they're doing it, and I'm glad that's happening.
Yes, I know. My family has a hotel and restaurant back in Pennsylvania. And it's funny. They're like gangbusters. They can only run at 75% occupancy. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like only outdoor seating. And even with those constraints, they're having the best months ever in the business's history. And I'm talking my sister Jenny and my sister Bridget pretty much run the place now, and they do run the place now. And I'm just like, I tell my sister Jenny, I'm like, man, Dad would be so proud of you. Like, look at you fielding this crisis and finding opportunity in it and finding ways to succeed. I'm like, that's very cool. I'm like, my dad would say, like, that's the Logan way. That's what Logan's
That's
doing.
right.
Like,
that's awesome.
Well done. He'd be so proud. So that's awesome.
But that in general, like you just mentioned, whether it's the hospitality business, that is something I think we do miss. This is the first summer that we haven't, as a family, gotten on a plane and gone somewhere. When we still took some time off, we took a local car trip someplace, right? But it's the first, we have a multi-family camping trip we do up in Big Sur every year, and that got canceled. Mm-hmm. Those are things we have to book the campsites all adjacent to do that. It takes like 6 months in advance of plan. So that didn't happen. But we also didn't, go, like I said, get on a plane and go to Hawaii or fly to see family or do something. That whole thing, whether it's that part of travel, I do miss. But again, it's temporary. That'll come back. But the other summer activities that you do when you're home, for us, there's always been a lot of concerts or baseball games, and I'm not missing the whole sport. I'm not a big sports guy anyway. I mean, we have through work, I have Dodger season tickets, and I do miss that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been the heartbreak for me. But as you know, my kids, at least one of them you're getting to know really well.
Yeah.
Not having concerts to go to is a bummer.
Yeah, right?
That's kind of like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I was just reading the other day that some of those outdoor sheds, like the big one where we were up in the Bay Area was Shoreline. Here, I'm sure it's Hollywood Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Those are probably going to have a better opportunity to open sooner than later because, like you just mentioned, 75% or 50% capacity. There's no reason for somebody to be sitting right on your lap. But that was kind of cool when they did, when everybody rushed to the front and everybody elbowed asshole and nobody cared. Right? It was kind of cool, but that's going to...
even at the Hollywood Bowl, you could sell every third seat and still probably end up with about 3,000 people.
That's what I was thinking too.
People. That's got to be even if they had to raise the tickets or something like that, whatever, you're still going to make money.
We would pay it, right? Wouldn't everybody
pay? Would pay it, no problem. Yeah, they would sell out.
Just to be able to go do that again would be fun.
The Hollywood Bowl season every year, they usually open it up and like Steely Dan will play. And I remember I took my mom there to see it once. It was great. And I'm like, if they said, hey, they're gonna do a Hollywood Bowl show, the LA Philharmonic is going to play and Steely Dan's going to play, the place would sell out. Like whatever amount of tickets they would allow to be open, they would be sold.
That's funny. When you brought up Steely Dan, there's a funny story. A couple of friends of mine that because you guys did a Steely Dan cover a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we did Peg.
And Peg. Yeah. It always reminds me of there's a friend of mine who
was your favorite foreign movie.
Well, there's a buddy of mine who was like it's his favorite band. And I thought, I've never met anybody who that's their favorite band. To me, it was always one of those things. You don't change the station when it's on. It's cool, but I'm not out. I wasn't one of those guys out rushing to buy the records or go to the shows. And so I guess there's a couple of friends of mine. I asked them once how they met, and one of them was the music critic for the San Jose Mercury News, and the other guy was in the tech. He was an IT guy, but he was also a musician. Actually has his master's, I think, in music and. A great drummer, piano player, great musician. Anyway, he goes to a Steely Dan concert because it's his favorite band ever, and he gets up in the morning and he wants to read the review, and it was a stinky review. And the critic was just, saying what critics do, and they, poop on it or whatever. And he winds up getting so motivated, angry at this, he wants to send a letter to this guy. And were you even at the show? And you're biased, you don't like him. Do you know a damn thing about music? He does this whole thing, and they wind up later meeting, and he says, "You're the guy that wrote that article. You're the guy that sent me that letter." And then they became roommates. They've actually played in bands together. They still do jam together. The guy that was the music critic is actually plays harmonica, and it's really fun. And the other guy was like, "Hey, I finally got," when they also got a mutual understanding of each other. As one of them said, "Hey man, I've realized to be a good music critic, you can be somebody who goes to see a show that doesn't even like it, or maybe doesn't understand what you're seeing. You got to be a prolific writer." And that's what, this guy is an amazing writer. He still is, by the way. He's a great writer.
Wow, that's
And he's also, I think he's a great musician too, and just a good all around dude. But it was really funny when he's like, "Oh, I forgot how I met your buddy, man. He sent me a letter when he was so mad." It was like, Steely Dan. That's one thing I ever let. Just don't talk any shit about Steely Dan around him. And now we're friends.
That's wild.
Isn't that really funny?
That's wild. Yeah. I think the only bands that if someone was disparaging of Mike Patton or Tool, or maybe Pink Floyd.